So our previous talks on sex work and honeypots leads me into borderline personality and why we actually get people with borderline personality. A number of things arise with borderline. They are often, and they don't necessarily mean it starts early on, but the worst and severe types of borderline do in fact originate from a young age, even as young as a few weeks old. And how does that arise? Basically, we have id, ego, and superego. Best way to describe it is the Freudian way. The id is a child. We assume the child is like a bundling bunch of neurons looking for nurture and help, I guess, and making sense of the world. And if that child is then abused, either emotionally, or not fed, or not held and loved, or sexually abused, all of those, or some of them, then that child becomes disjointed as they grow up. They don't understand what reality is. We call that the id. A few years pass and we get the ego. Let's say between 9 and say 15. The ego is developing a sense of self and trust. But if they're sexually abused, or they are shouted at, or they are not loved, then that ego has a tendency not to develop well. It's shattered. And then we have the superego, I guess you could say between say 15 and 21, where we actually develop a sense of self, what is right and wrong, develop of consciousness. And that's why we see people basically fragment when they try to align all these bits together, because none of them have actually formed properly. So you'll find people with personality disorders are very fragile, often become aggressive, angry, frustrated, shouting, screaming, throwing plates, even biting their partner, and often the relationship fails because for no apparent reason they become emotionally dysregulated. And that's because all those parts didn't actually get settled when they were young. They didn't develop as a normal human being. And that brings us to then what happens to these people. Well, we know that they're fragile, they're unable to hold relationships, and around 86%, sometimes lower, sometimes more, but my view is 86% of sex workers have actually been sexually abused. That doesn't mean all sex workers have a personality disorder, but it does mean there is a fragile superego, a fragile ego. So I'm going to leave it there. That's your personality disorder in a nutshell. It's why people cut themselves, do self-harm, talk about suicide, can't hold a relationship. I'm now going to go into, for the next talk, I'm going to talk about the sociopathic personality disorder. So I really would like to do that next. This is the Sentinella, over and out.